Ethan sat on the same old bench every day during his lunch break. The bench was rusty, standing beside the canteen's back wall near the dumpsters. Most workers avoided this place because of the smell, but Ethan liked the quiet, and he liked to be alone. He pulled out a paper bag from his backpack, unwrapped his burger, and opened a small box of fries. The food was still warm, the fries golden and crispy. He was about to take his first bite when he felt the strange feeling of being watched. He looked around confused. No one else was there, just the buzzing of flies and the hum of machines in the distance. Then he saw movement near the trash bins. A shadow, small and fast, ducked behind a stack of broken crates. Ethan stood slowly, holding his fries in one hand. "Hello?" he called out. There was no reply. He took a careful step forward, peeking behind the crates. That's when he saw her, a small alien girl, crouched low to the ground, her arms wrapped around her knees. Her skin was pale with a silver-blue tint, and her hair was messy, white strands hanging over her glowing eyes. She looked starved bones poking under her torn clothing, her face thin, lips cracked. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at him like a frightened animal. Ethan froze, unsure what to do. He wasn't trained for this. She looked so young. Maybe a teenager by human standards? Was she dangerous? But then, he noticed the way she glanced at his fries, her eyes locked onto them with hunger and longing. He could feel her stomach growl, even from a distance. Slowly, he crouched down and placed the box of fries on the ground between them. He didn't say anything, just backed away slowly and returned to the bench. The girl didn't move at first, just kept watching him. Then, like a cat approaching food, she crept forward inch by inch. Her fingers trembled as she reached out and took one fry. She sniffed it, then quickly shoved it into her mouth. The next one disappeared even faster. Ethan didn't speak, didn't interrupt. He just watched her eat like she hadn't eaten in days. Soon the box was empty, and she sat back. Again, curling into herself, but now her eyes were locked on Ethan, not with fear, but curiosity. A minute later, 2 other workers came around the corner, laughing and heading toward the bench. The moment they stepped close, the alien girl shot up. She let out a deep, rumbling growl, her teeth bared, her eyes glowing brighter. The men froze, one of them stumbling back in fear. "What the hell is that?" one shouted. Ethan stood quickly, holding his hands up. "It's okay," he said. "She's not attacking, just scared." But the alien girl didn't stop growling until the 2 men left, muttering curses under their breath. When they were gone, she looked at Ethan again, this time with softer eyes. She took one step toward him, then sat beside the bench, not on it, just close enough to feel near. Ethan looked down at her, speechless. She didn't speak his language, but her actions were clear. He had earned her trust that night. Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the girl behind the dumpster. Who was she? Where did she come from? Why was she alone and starving on Earth? He had heard rumors of abandoned alien refugees, of ships that crashed and no one came to rescue them. But seeing it with his own eyes was different. It felt personal now. The next day during lunch, Ethan returned to the same bench. He brought 2 boxes of fries this time. He didn't know if she'd return, but when he sat down, he heard soft footsteps behind the dumpster. Then she appeared. Same clothes, same messy hair, same glowing eyes. And this time she didn't hide. She walked right up to him, knelt beside the bench, and looked up expectantly. Ethan smiled and placed the fries beside her. She grabbed one, then looked at him, really looked at him. There was something in her eyes now. Not just hunger, but connection, like she had chosen him. And when another worker walked by and whistled, she let out a soft warning growl, low but firm. The man laughed nervously and walked faster. Ethan blinked, surprised. She wasn't just thankful anymore, she was protective. He looked down at her, and in that moment, sitting beside the dumpsters on a rusty bench, Ethan knew his life had just changed forever. Ethan didn't expect to see her again. He thought maybe she was just passing through. Maybe she'd vanished like a ghost. But when he returned to the bench the next day, there she was, sitting exactly where he left her, her legs folded under her eyes, glowing softly in the shade. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was waiting, He froze in place, not knowing what to do. Then slowly, he sat down on the bench, carefully opened his lunch, and placed the fries beside him. She stood, walked over, and sat on the ground close to his feet. She didn't touch the food right away. She looked at him first, as if asking for permission. Ethan gave a small nod, and only then did she begin to eat. That day, 2 women walked by, chatting and laughing. One of them glanced at the alien girl and whispered, "Creepy thing." The other giggled, "I'd run if I saw that outside." The alien girl stopped chewing and slowly turned her head. She didn't growl this time, just stared, cold and silent. The 2 women picked up their pace and hurried away. Ethan could feel the tension lift as they vanished around the corner. After lunch, Ethan walked back to the factory gates, but he heard soft steps behind him. He turned. There she was, walking a few meters behind, not too close, not too far, just following. He tried ignoring it, thinking she'd stop once they reached the factory. But she didn't. She waited outside, near the fence, sitting quietly on a patch of dirt, and when his shift ended 8 hours later, she was still there, waiting. "Why are you following me?" he asked, standing awkwardly outside the gate. She tilted her head, as if trying to understand. She didn't speak, didn't move, just blinked slowly. Then she stood, took a single step closer, and pointed at him. Then touched her chest, then sat down again. Ethan sighed, confused but not scared. Something about her calmness made it feel safe. That night, she followed him home, down the street, crossed the crosswalk, even up to the steps of his small apartment building. She never said a word, never tried to enter. She just sat down by the door and looked up at the stars. Ethan peeked through the window every hour. She didn't leave, even when it got cold. Even when it started to drizzle, she stayed. The next morning, she was still there, asleep with her back against the wall, arms wrapped around her legs. He opened the door gently, trying not to wake her. But her eyes snapped open the moment she heard the creak. She didn't seem angry, just alert. He handed her a towel and some toast. She took them, touched his hand briefly, and nodded once. Then she followed him again, all the way to work. By the 3rd day, people had started to notice. They began whispering as Ethan passed by with her in tow. "Is that the alien girl? She's like a stray dog. Isn't it dangerous?" Ethan ignored them all. He didn't feel danger, not from her. She'd never hurt anyone. She just stayed close to him, growled when someone got too friendly, and walked quietly beside him. One man tried to slap Ethan's back jokingly during lunch. In a flash, the girl stepped between them, growling low, teeth bared, eyes glowing bright. The man backed away quickly, muttering an apology. Ethan didn't even need to say anything. It wasn't long before she earned a nickname around the site, Ghost Shadow. They said she never blinked, never slept, and would tear apart anyone who messed with Ethan. Ethan didn't mind. He kind of liked the idea of having someone on his side for once. He started bringing her better food, real meals, warm ones, wrapped in foil. She never took more than she needed, always left the last piece behind. He noticed her getting stronger, her cheeks less hollow, her eyes brighter each day. But she still never smiled. Not once. That evening, Ethan sat with her outside his apartment. Again. "I don't know what you want," he said softly, "but you can't keep sleeping outside." She tilted her head as if trying to solve his words. Then slowly, she pulled out a small piece of paper from her pocket. It was wrinkled, torn, almost unreadable, but on it, in crooked writing, were 2 simple words: "Safe place." Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. He nodded slowly. "Yes, you're safe here," he said, voice gentle. She didn't speak, but she finally did something different. She leaned her head against his arm and closed her eyes, and Ethan knew she wasn't just following him. She had chosen him. Ethan was used to being invisible. He lived a quiet life, never got in fights, never raised his voice. But ever since the alien girl started following him, things had changed. People stared when he walked by. They crossed the street to avoid him, not because of him, but because of her, and she never left his side, not even once. That morning started like any other. Ethan stepped out of his apartment, holding 2 foil-wrapped sandwiches, the alien girl whom he now called Rhea. In his mind, though she never gave a name, stood waiting under the broken lamppost. Her silver-blue skin shimmered faintly in the morning sun. Her eyes found his immediately, as if she had been watching the door all night. She said nothing, but stepped closer. Walking beside him, they walked the usual way to the factory, down a narrow street lined with rusted cars and flickering lights. The morning air was cool, filled with the scent of fuel and wet concrete. Rhea kept her head low, eyes scanning every shadow. Ethan had noticed something strange about her. She never relaxed, never truly let her guard down. It was like she was waiting for something bad to happen, and that morning it did. A group of factory workers had gathered at the corner store near the gate. 3 of them, Mike, Bren, and Tall John, were known for their loud mouths and cruel jokes. They didn't like Ethan, thought he was weird for keeping a pet alien. As Ethan passed, they whistled, loud and mocking. Well, 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 lover. Boys here, Mike called. Careful, Ethan, Bren laughed. She might lay eggs in your brain. Tall John blocked their path with a grin. Hey, alien chick, can you even talk or just hiss? Ethan tried to move past, head down, but Tall John suddenly reached out and shoved him hard in the chest. Ethan stumbled back, dropping the sandwiches. The foil opened, and food spilled across the pavement. In that exact moment, everything froze. Rhea's body went stiff, her muscles tightening like coiled wires. Then she stepped in front of Ethan, between him and the others. Her breathing slowed, her eyes narrowed, and then she growled. It wasn't like before. This wasn't a small warning sound. This was a deep, violent growl that echoed off the buildings like thunder. It shook the glass in nearby windows and made a street cat flee with a shriek. The ground itself seemed to vibrate beneath their feet. Mike and Bren backed away instantly, hands raised, but Tall John didn't move. What? You gonna bark louder? He said with a smirk. Rhea's eyes glowed bright white, her skin shimmering with blue veins of light. She opened her mouth, and this time she roared, a sound that split the air, something ancient and terrifying. John fell backward, hitting the ground hard. Ethan grabbed Rhea's shoulder, his voice shaking. Stop. It's okay, I'm fine. But she didn't move. She stood over Ethan like a shield, teeth bared, growling so loud it made car alarms go off nearby. People ran out of shops to see what was happening. Phones came out. Recordings started. And in the middle of it all stood Rhea, defending the only human who had ever fed her. It took Ethan placing both hands on her arms to finally calm her down. She looked at him, breathing hard. Her glow slowly faded. Her growl reduced to a soft rumble in her throat. Then, gently, she knelt down and picked up the ruined sandwich, pressing it into Ethan's hand. The crowd whispered among themselves. Did you see that? She nearly blew the guy apart with sound. Is she some kind of weapon? Ethan just stood there, heart pounding, unsure whether to be afraid or honored, because deep inside, he knew Rhea would have killed for him that day. The factory manager called Ethan into his office. Listen, the man said, scratching his head. I don't care what species that girl is, but this is bad for business. You want me to leave her? Ethan asked coldly. The manager paused, then sighed. No, just keep her calm, all right? Oh, one more growl like that, and we'll have the military knocking. When Ethan left the office, he found Rhea waiting outside. She stood with her arms crossed, her face blank, but her eyes never left him. He smiled weakly. You really scared them. She blinked once, then touched his chest gently. Right over his heart. She still didn't speak, but she didn't have to. Everyone knew she wasn't just following him. She was protecting him with her life. Ethan didn't expect her to follow him home again, but she did, quietly, like a shadow that belonged to him. She didn't walk beside him anymore. She walked behind him, eyes scanning rooftops, corners, passing vehicles. Every step she took was deliberate, as if protecting him was her mission now. When they reached the apartment complex, Ethan turned to face her. You don't have to stay out here again, he said gently. She tilted her head, her long white hair shifting with the breeze. She didn't reply. She never did, but she stepped to the side and sat at the foot of the stairway. Just like before, he waited a moment. Watching her, she curled her knees to her chest, arms wrapped around them. Eyes half closed, but never truly asleep, the cold concrete didn't seem to bother her. It bothered him, though, that night. As he lay in his bed, he kept thinking about her out there. Unblinking, under the broken light bulb, he tossed and turned. Imagining her thin body catching the night chill at 2 a.m., he got up, pulled out a spare blanket and an old pillow, and quietly opened the front door. She didn't move, but her glowing eyes opened slowly, meeting his. "I can't sleep if..." "You're freezing," he muttered, placing the blanket around her shoulders. She didn't react at first, but after a long pause, she carefully pulled the blanket tighter around herself. Ethan left the door slightly open that night, just in case. By morning, she was gone.
Ow.
But the blanket was neatly folded and placed beside his door. A small bundle of leaves and berries sat beside it like a thank you gift. He smiled without meaning to. There was something gentle in her wildness, something honest beneath her silence. That afternoon, he found her waiting at the bench again, this time. She brought him a gift, a metal pendant, small and rusty, but carved with strange alien markings. She held it in both hands, walked up to him, and placed it on his palm without a word. Ethan looked at the pendant, then at her. "Is this important to you?" he asked. She nodded once, firmly, then stepped back, eyes down, as if shy. The next few nights, she didn't leave his doorstep. Rain or wind, she stayed. Ethan tried convincing her to sleep inside. He showed her the couch, the warm room, a glass of water on the side table, but she only stood at the door, stared inside, then gently closed it with her hand on him, not on herself. She would not enter, but she would not leave either, and every morning, Ethan found her asleep on the doorstep, curled in the blanket he gave every evening. He found her waiting at the factory gates, and between those hours the world began to notice. People no longer laughed. They whispered instead, afraid or curious. "She guards his door. She doesn't eat unless he's eaten. She's like a silent sentinel." One night, Ethan brought home a friend, a girl from the accounting office named Mia. They had barely entered the building when Rhea appeared from the alley, stepping in front of the doorway. She didn't growl, but her body was tense. Her fists clenched, her glowing eyes fixed on Mia's face. "What the hell, Lethon?" "Who is that?" Mia asked, stepping back. Ethan raised his hands. "It's okay. She's just protective." Rhea didn't move. She stood like a barrier made of silver and rage. Only when Mia walked away did she relax that night. Ethan sat on the steps with her again, staring at the stars above. "You're not just following me anymore," he whispered. "You're guarding me." She said nothing, but she leaned her head against his shoulder, just for a moment. It was the first time she had touched him, without urgency, without fear. It felt soft. The next morning, there was a noise outside his door, a scratching, like someone trying to write. When he opened it, she was gone. But there was a symbol drawn on the wall, using ash and mud, 2 figures side by side, one larger, one smaller. Holding hands, he touched it gently. She was trying to communicate. She couldn't say it, but she showed it. In her way, she was saying, "I belong with you." Not like a pet, not like a soldier, but like something deeper, something instinctual. She didn't speak words, but her silence spoke louder than any voice Ethan had ever heard. And every night she returned, curled up outside his door, guarding it like a temple, as if her life depended on it, or maybe it did. Ethan didn't think she would ever speak. Weeks had passed, and not a single word had come from her mouth. She watched everything, reacted to danger, protected him without question, but her silence was like a wall, strong, thick, and unbreakable. He had accepted it, he told himself. Maybe this is just who she is. But everything changed the day he got hurt. It was late in the afternoon, during a repair shift at the factory. Ethan was helping replace a damaged power conduit when the floor gave out beneath him. He dropped hard, metal slicing across his arm and leg as he landed. Sparks flew, someone screamed for help. The world spun, and pain flooded his senses. Blood dripped onto the dusty floor, and he couldn't move. Within minutes, Workers rushed in, but someone else got there first. She ran like lightning, eyes glowing, her hair flying behind her like a banner of moonlight. Raya, she dropped to her knees beside him, pushing past the others without care. Her hands hovered over his wounds, shaking, unsure what to do. She made a strange sound, a whimper mixed with a growl, as if her throat didn't know what to choose. Then she pressed her head gently against his chest and shut her eyes tight. Is she crying? Someone whispered. No one dared move closer. The glow from her skin was pulsing bright, unstable, like her body was reacting to his pain.
Ow.
Then she opened her mouth, and she spoke. Mine. She whispered, her voice hoarse, broken but clear. Everyone froze. Ethan's breath caught. Raya looked up, her eyes wet, and said it again. Stronger this time. Mine. It wasn't a command. It wasn't ownership. It was something deeper, something primal. Like a vow, she wrapped her arms around him and growled low when anyone stepped forward. She was protecting her human. Not with claws or strength this time, but with a single word. They had to call a medic to convince her to move. Even then, she only stepped aside when Ethan, still conscious, touched her hand and nodded slowly. She didn't leave the room. She sat in the corner the whole time, eyes locked on him, her glowing. Skin finally faded to a soft, steady light as the bleeding stopped. Later that evening, Ethan lay in the medical room, bandaged and sore. Raya sat at the edge of the bed, knees pulled up, arms hugging her legs. She didn't look at him. She seemed ashamed. You spoke, Ethan said softly. She didn't reply. Why now? He asked, forcing a weak smile. Were you waiting for the right moment? Still, she was silent, but her head lowered slightly, her eyes shut, and her hands clenched tight. Hey, Ethan said gently. It's okay. I'm not mad. I'm just... Surprised, he reached out, touched her wrist. She flinched, but didn't pull away finally. She looked at him. Her voice came out in pieces, like a song that had been broken and rebuilt. Hurt. Not allowed, she whispered. Not allowed to hurt? He asked, confused. She nodded. You? Pain? Mind feel? Ethan's heart thumped. You feel my pain? She nodded again, then placed her palm over his bandage, then over her own chest. Same, she said. We. Same now. It hit Ethan all at once. She wasn't just following him out of gratitude. She wasn't just protecting him out of instinct. Somehow, she had bonded with him, linked in ways he couldn't understand. And when he hurt, she hurt. When he bled, something inside her broke too. That night, Ethan didn't sleep alone. Raya sat by his side, not guarding like before but present. She hummed softly, strange alien sounds that carried emotion without needing translation. She reached out once, carefully placed her fingers against his cheek and whispered again, mine. But this time, he whispered back, yours. No one dared to question her anymore. The girl who never spoke now had one word, and it was his. Not out of ownership, but connection, and in that quiet hospital room, with stars blinking outside the window, Ethan understood something he never expected. He wasn't just her protector, he was her person, and maybe, just maybe, she was his too, asterisk for a few days. Things were peaceful, Ethan's wounds were healing, and Raya never left his side. She followed him to work, sat outside the lunchroom, and guarded his apartment every night. She didn't speak again. But she didn't have to. Her presence was steady, comforting like a silent promise. But peace never lasts long when something beautiful doesn't belong. Started with the van, a black government vehicle with no plates, parked outside the factory gate. At first, Ethan didn't notice, but Raya did. She stiffened, her glowing eyes narrowing as she stared at the dark glass. Her hands twitched at her sides like she wanted to run, but didn't. 3 men in gray suits came in that afternoon. They didn't speak to the workers, didn't smile. They walked straight to the factory office. And 10 minutes later, Ethan's name was called over the speaker. Entered the room to find the suits already seated. His manager looked pale, nervous. Mr. Ethan Blake, the lead agent said. His voice flat. We need to talk about the alien. Ethan's stomach dropped. She's not hurting anyone, he said. "She's not dangerous." "That's not up to you to decide," the man replied. "She's undocumented, unregistered, and not cleared by the Interspecies Act." "She saved my life," Ethan argued. "She protects people. She is not a pet." The second agent cut in sharply. "You don't own her. I don't want to own her," Ethan said, his voice shaking. "I just want her to be safe. We're relocating her to a containment facility," the third man added, "for her own safety and for public security." Ethan rushed out of the office, heart pounding. Raya was standing outside the gate like always, waiting. But something in her posture was wrong, too still, too silent. She already knew. He didn't have to explain. The black van pulled up with a quiet hiss, and the agents walked out, surrounding her. They didn't raise weapons, but they wore gloves-thick, glowing cuffs in their hands. Containment tech. Raya looked at Ethan one last time. She didn't beg, didn't cry. She just whispered, "Mine," and stepped back as they moved toward her. Then, without warning, she roared. The same roar that had shaken the street weeks ago. A sonic wave that made the van's windows crack and every bird fly from the trees nearby. The agents stumbled, holding their ears, shouting, but Raya didn't attack. She ran not away, toward Ethan. She threw her arms around him, trembling, her face buried in his chest. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't let them take me." Ethan stood frozen as the agents advanced again, this time more cautiously. "She's bonded," one said. "We should have expected that. You touch her again," Ethan warned, "and I'll fight back. You do that and you'll be arrested," the lead agent replied. "She feels what I feel," Ethan shouted. "If you hurt me, you'll break her. She's not a citizen," the man snapped. "She doesn't have rights." Ethan looked down at the girl clinging to him like he was her entire world, then looked up, eyes filled with quiet rage. "Then I'll give her mine," he said. The crowd had started gathering by then, workers, neighbors, people who had seen the girl protecting him. Phones were recording, voices rising. "She's not a monster. She saves people. She's one of us now." The agents paused. Too many eyes, too many cameras. One of them spoke into a communicator. "Sir. Situation's public. High visibility, a long silence. Then the lead agent sighed. "Temporary release," he said quietly. "But she stays under watch." They stepped back, leaving behind the cuffs. Raya didn't move, didn't speak, just kept holding Ethan like she never wanted to let go again. That night, she didn't sleep outside the door. She slept inside, curled beside his bed like a child hiding from the world. And when Ethan woke in the middle of the night, he found her. Watching him, her voice was softer this time. "You? Hurt? I'd die." "No," he whispered, brushing her hair from her face. "If they try again." "I won't let them take you," she nodded, then pressed her forehead against his. No more walls, no more fear. They were no longer two separate beings. They were one story now, written in silence and scars. The bench hadn't changed. It was still rusty, still half-bent, still hidden behind the noisy canteen and the smelly dumpster. But for Ethan and Raya, it had become something sacred. It wasn't just a place to eat fries anymore. It was the place where everything began. They returned there every lunch break, just like the first day. Ethan would bring 2 boxes of fries, one for him, one for her, and Raya would sit beside him, never on the bench but always close, so close their shoulders almost touched. Her eyes never wandered anymore. They were always on him, the factory. Workers had stopped staring. They greeted Ethan like normal. Some even gave shy nods to Raya, especially after the video of the black van incident went viral. People online called her the growling guardian. Memes were made, but behind the jokes, something deeper was happening. People saw her loyalty, her pain, her choice. The government agents never came back. Too much public pressure, too many witnesses. One silent alien girl had touched something deep in the hearts of thousands. She had growled her way into their sympathy, and now no one dared to separate them again. Raya had changed too. She started smiling, not wide, not often, but real, when Ethan shared a joke. Her lips curled ever so slightly when he handed her extra fries. She tilted her head in a way that almost looked playful. She even laughed once. A soft, strange sound, but it made Ethan freeze with joy. That was the first time he realized she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was healing. One morning, Ethan found her staring at the sky. "What are you thinking about?" he asked gently. She didn't answer at first. Then she pointed at the clouds and whispered, "My sky was red." He looked up at the blue and asked, "Do you like this one better?" She paused, then nodded slowly. "Red sky. She said blue sky. Calm, he reached over and held her hand. "You're safe here," he said. "This is your world now, too." That afternoon, something strange happened. A little girl, no older than 6, wandered near the bench holding a stuffed toy. She tripped and scraped her knee on the ground. Letting out a small cry before Ethan could move, Raya was already beside her. She gently helped the child up, examined the tiny wound, and tore a strip from her own sleeve to wrap around the girl's leg. The girl blinked up at her with big eyes. "You're pretty," she said. Raya smiled. "Just a little. Safe," she whispered, patting the child's head. The mother came running and stopped short, afraid at first, but then softened when she saw the scene. "Thank you," she said to Raya, voice trembling. Raya just nodded and returned to Ethan's side. Ethan watched the moment silently, his heart full. "You're not invisible anymore," he said. "They see you. They see us," Raya replied, surprising him. It was the first time she had ever used that word, "dus." He looked at her in awe, and for the first time, he saw not a scared alien, not a wild protector, but a girl, a friend, a soul who had chosen him as the sun began to set. Casting golden light on the edge of the factory roof, Ethan stood up from the bench and extended his hand to her. "Want to come home?" he asked. She hesitated, then slipped her fingers into his. They walked slowly through the alley, her footsteps lighter than ever before. She no longer followed him. She walked with him, back at the apartment. She didn't stop at the door. She entered first this time, placed her shoes beside his, sat on the couch and looked at him with calm eyes, like she finally knew this was hers too now. Not borrowed, not temporary. Home that night, they shared dinner, watched the lights flicker. Outside the window, she didn't curl up at the edge of the room anymore. She sat beside him, leaned her head on his shoulder, and for the first time in her entire life, she whispered a sentence, full and clear. "You are my peace." Ethan didn't speak. He just held her hand tighter. No longer was she the wild alien behind the dumpster. No longer was he just a human who shared his fries. They were something else now, something bigger. Two lonely beings from two broken worlds, who found one small bench and made it their whole universe.